welcome back to Getting to the Top, where I interview transformational leaders about their leadership journey in hopes that we can inspire you to either enhance your leadership journey or encourage you to pursue leadership on your own. Today, I have the great honor of interviewing Dr. Shenilee Hazell. She's made a concerted effort to combine her passion for philanthropy and her purpose, which is dentistry, to serve masses in the UK and Trinidad and Tobago. She's a University of Bristol and certified by the Royal College of Surgeons in Edinburgh. And she's the founder and director of Smiling Dental. And she leads an all-female team of dental surgeons and highly qualified supporting staff who are committed to development and executing using cutting-edge technology in dentistry. She is the first female dentist to be an official Colgate ambassador, and you will see her throughout various islands in the Caribbean in this role. Welcome, Dr. Shenilee Hazell.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful to have you. So I'm going to declare my hand a little bit, something that there are a lot of things about this podcast that I never say, but are nonetheless true. And one of the things is that I focus more on people in corporate because I want to highlight the lack of diversity in corporate. Right. So while I've interviewed a few entrepreneurs, it has always been, I've interviewed this entrepreneur because I feel like they can support and help create more diversity in corporate. So different leaders who I think are either coaching leaders in corporate or supporting leaders in corporate through their work. But I was on Instagram one day and I read this phenomenal story about this woman who is this other woman's daughter and is committed to just hard work and just did all of these crazy jobs because she just had this desire to become this woman at the top. And this woman is this woman. And I said, people have to hear this story. So I'm going to ask you to retell that story for me about you as a little girl and how you decided that you wanted to pursue leadership.
Okay, so thank you so much for that introduction, firstly. And it is such an honor to be on this podcast. It's so inspiring. I've listened to quite a few of them. I've listened to so many of the initial ones as well. And actually seeing and hearing other stories, it's so inspirational. You have no idea. So thank you so much. It's a huge honor to be part of this. So my story. So I grew up in Trinidad until the age of 11, going on 12. And then I moved to the UK to live with my mom, who'd always lived there. And she was a single parent. And at the time, she couldn't send me just like that to a state school. She had to send me to a private school. So we had to do lots of like entrance exams and ended up going to a very prestigious school called James Allen Girls' School in London, in Dulwich in London. And I think seeing her sacrifice a lot. So she was a single parent, as I said, and she worked at the time as an NHS midwife. Mm-hmm. And she was in that same corporate system. Right. And a lot of the time she had to work extra shifts. Sometimes she would work a private job doing nursing as well as doing her day job and going on call and working incredibly hard to afford to send me to a private school. So looking at her growing up, seeing all those sacrifices, it seriously set the tone for me for hard work. And even, there are times at school where I'm like waiting for her to come and get me. And I'm like, okay, eventually I was just like, you know what, mommy, I can travel. So I actually started to take the national rail. So the train, head train. We didn't have tube where we lived. So taking the trains and the buses and, being independent from a very young age in London. And just seeing all that sacrifice and then it forcing me to become independent actually set the tone for my working career. Yeah. So I was saying that I first started off, my first job was in a hardware store selling paints and like wood varnishes. So and
apparently you could still have an in-depth conversation about varnish.
Pretty much. Pretty much. And also the different types of varnishes you can have for different different woods and different stains as well.
Yes.
So yeah, it's one of those things that I really got really randomly really into because it was just the environment. So that would be like my weekend job. And then on holidays, I used to love holidays because then I could work extra and make more money.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I worked in a sneaker shop called First. It doesn't no longer exist. It used to call First Sport. It was like the rival of JD Sports. So it was based on a lot of hard work. So there were quotas. We had to sell a certain amount of sneakers within a certain day, within a certain time as a team. And obviously, like, I think that's where I started to get super competitive with things. So I always wanted to sell the most sneakers. And every Saturday we used to have a little competition going on. So there was that. And then I worked. So actually all through university, I worked in a supermarket. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but Sainsbury's. I worked in Sainsbury's. So I worked as
they are not a sponsor, but they're not a sponsor.
Okay. So yeah, I worked in Sainsbury's all the way through university, and like I used to see my friends shopping, like, hey, I'm here. So yeah, it was really, really cool. I actually enjoyed having a job. Like I loved having a way that I can earn and essentially do what I wanted. So I felt like a lot of freedom that way as well. Yeah. And I also look forward to the holidays for that specific reason. So again, like always, I think I inherited that from my mom, working super hard, always like being in control of and independent of what I, you know.
And I think one of the things you said was that seeing her work hard made you so determined because you understood the sacrifice that it took.
Correct. Absolutely.
For you, you know, so you didn't take any of those things for granted. And so you were quite ambitious from very early as well.
Very, very young. Exactly. Yeah. And also the business as well. So a lot of my friends had businesses or their families' businesses, and seeing what freedom they had from that was just like, I knew one day that I would do it. I didn't know when, but I knew that's something that I always wanted to do for sure.
Yeah. Good. So then you're now deciding on your career. So what was the first thing that you thought you would do as like your grown-up job?
So I guess before university, when I was growing up, I knew that I wanted to do a service job. Like I wanted to help people and to serve people because again, seeing my mom. So my mom worked in the National Health Service in Trinidad. And she kind of worked her way up from midwife to be a health visitor, then a community. She worked in public health. Right. And then she did a lot of her further education and her master's in public health. So lots of things like immunization, research-based projects. And I guess just seeing her in the NHS system made me think, okay, I need to do something with service where you're actually making a difference, right? So I knew that I didn't want to be a doctor because that was, I guess it seemed really intense in terms of work hours. And when I was actually choosing a university degree, I was just looking to see, you know, which was the university degree that would guarantee that I would get a job at the end, because there are lots of stories back then where it was like you go through university and you come out and you don't have a job. And that would have been like my nightmare, right? So
yes.
It was all of this work and sacrifice. So I was just like, I'm gonna choose something where I can be guaranteed to come out and be working.
Right.
So that's why I stumbled on dentistry. It was definitely not something that was a lifelong dream for me at all. I think. Yeah. And then when I started doing it, I was just like, oh my goodness, there's lots of blood. And I was just not prepared. And actually something that a lot of people don't know is during dental school, I was kind of known as the person to dodge surgery because it took me a long time to be comfortable with it. So it was, you know, we have to go on to oral surgery clinic and I would just be like, not feeling well today. Like, so it took me a long time. And then when I eventually faced it, I would like faint during,
oh my God.
I had to take out a tooth. I would be like, yeah. So I had to train my brain, and that kind of
Yes.
strength was like a huge journey and a huge obstacle to overcome during dental school, to actually be comfortable with taking out a tooth, which was, we had a quota, we had a requirement in order for us to graduate. We had to do this. So in
Wow.
the end, I ended up being okay with it. I think I managed to negotiate that I work extra. So on our afternoons, I would go actually scrub in to the extraction clinic, which was the GA clinic, and essentially face my fears.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's a great,
and I was
that's a great
okay.
lesson as well. So I'll tell you something that most people don't know about me either. So I was fantastic at biology in high school, and I loved, love biology still to this day.
Yeah.
But I am also quite squeamish. And so
Yeah.
in undergrad, I actually was the first non-biology major to win the biology award. And so,
Wow. Okay.
my professor was a retired doctor, and he's like, you should become a doctor. I said,
Right.
if only I want to vomit on people, because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I will see the first something grows and I will throw up on somebody.
I was like that as well. I was like that. So I was just like, how am I going to do this? And it was like my own personal battle that I had to get over. And a little bit of the story that I'm not disclosing, but I used to faint. So the patient would be in the chair, I'm taking out their tooth. Next thing you know, I'm in the chair and everybody's looking at me and trying to revive me. And I'm like, oh my God, I did it again. So that
did that ever happen professionally once you became?
No.
Oh, thank God.
No,
okay.
no. I think by then I'm talking like in my 3rd and 4th year of dental school. In my 4th to 5th year, that's when I kind of grew up, because I was just like okay, yeah, I'm not spending longer than I need to in dental school. I have to graduate. So I think it's something that I always knew that I had to do, and it was good for me in terms of a life lesson, because fear is one of the things that it feels like has always kind of controlled my decisions with certain things. And even though any type of thing that we choose to do, any kind of obstacle, always fear rules.
Oh
right?
My gosh, yes, that's such a good. Oh, and I hadn't even planned to talk to you about fear, but I think fear is such a big part of how we make decisions. And Golda Lee Bruce, who used to be on television, is now with the IDB doing phenomenally. She did a TED talk that I think is absolutely tremendous. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It talks about the opposite of love isn't hate, it's fear.
Yeah.
And listen to me, you get a box of tissue and put on like a warm sweater, because you're going to be goosebumpy all over, and sit and watch that TED talk, because
definitely check it out, for sure.
And she takes you through some very personal experiences where the options were love or fear, and she picked fear, and she realized it isn't hate, it is our being afraid of how people will perceive us. That keeps us back. And I think I'm absolutely 100% the same way. I mean, I joined a running club because I couldn't run a mile, and I'm like, I can't not be able to run a mile. So I'm going to have to train for a marathon, obviously, because that's the only option to kind of get completely over that. And I'm also really frightened in open water. So obviously I need to get PADI certification, because I cannot have that fear. And so I think I approach fear in the same way. Like I have to get spar on the other side of it.
Like you're faced with that choice, and that decision is so powerful. Like the decision to actually say, okay,
I cannot be afraid of this.
You can't be. And also just recognizing that this is a decision that you made, and actually going for it is part of the whole process. And it feels so good after you realize.
Yeah, it's empowering. You feel so strong because you realize, listen, there isn't anything that I'm I should be afraid of.
Absolutely.
Once you give into the fear, you're allowing something else to control you.
Correct. And actually, it's interesting that we're talking about this now, because I was thinking, one of the things that kind of stopped me from, because I saw a lot of my friends open their own clinics in the UK, and it seemed just so much more daunting over there for me to do that as the person that I was. And, I was so good at working hard. Like, I know how to work hard. Like, I know how to give it my all. It's something that I've done all the time.
Yeah.
So the actual dentistry and the long hours and the keep going, it's easy for me, right? But what threw me into a different, like what was essentially was a curveball was actually when I had to become a leader, because I was like, okay, I want my own clinic, I have my own clinic, but now I have to manage personalities and manage people from all walks of life and try to get the best out of them. When sometimes it is that, you know, they don't even see what I see in them. Like they don't even see the vision that I have for them. And to try and get them to have that confidence and to have that mindset is incredible. It's a journey as well, because, you know, I don't want to lead in the way that authoritarian way that is traditional, you know, that is, okay, I'm managing, you listen to me, do what I say. And I don't That's like
not how to inspire people.
Exactly.
And that doesn't feel authentic to you, right?
It doesn't feel authentic at all. And in a way, like it's been a whole, you know, I've made some mistakes. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, this is what I want. You know, my expectations are so high because I'm just like, yes, it's gonna happen. And actually going through lots of learning processes when things don't always go the way that I plan has helped me kind of formulate exactly how I strategize things, exactly how I approach problems, you know.
So what kind of leader are you? How would you describe yourself as a leader?
How would I describe myself? I think
or is it fairer to ask you, how would your team how would your team describe you as a leader?
I think I'm always changing. I think I'm always evolving. So I always have to kind of recalibrate because, you know, sometimes I have a mindset where I like to hit things head on, and I'm very perseverant. Like I don't like to hear no.
Right.
I think there's a way. I'm very optimistic. And so a lot of the times my goals aren't always realistic. And so when I realized that, I'm like, what did I do wrong? And part of it is I always like to take responsibility when things don't go wrong, because I'm like, hold on a second, who sponsors this? So going back to the table and, you know, admitting that, okay, this probably wasn't the best way to do it. Let's try again. And I am for trying again and trying again and trying again, because this, as I said, I tell everyone as well, this is the first time I'm doing something like this. And I always ask for feedback. So that constant communicative role where I kind of need that, like that's something that is essential. So if something is not wrong, anybody who's coming in through the door, I'm like, I want to know. You might have a better idea as to how to solve this problem.
Right.
I do. Of course, I think my idea is great, but
of course, right.
There might be another way. And for me, the outcome is what's the most important thing. So many times I have my strengths. I know what my strengths are. I'm very good with dentistry, but in terms of getting our team to all be, you know, focused on achieving, sometimes that involves, it's just like, as I say, like it's like a recipe. You have to add like a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And sometimes it is that we need to start over. Because we want it to be, and it's that repetitive, the consistent ability to change and to keep, you know, recalibrating is what I say, will kind of keep us going. Because I think for me, like I read a lot, I listen to a lot of podcasts, I'm always reading what the latest thing is.
And you're big on innovation. But it must have been scary. I mean, I know you were saying like it's scary. It was scary for you to contemplate opening a clinic in the UK. But to think about what you've built here, I mean, that has to be like daunting as well. Like, do you look back on it now and you're like, oh my goodness, this was huge. This was huge. Actually, I've built this big, recognizable practice that is absolutely renowned, and I am the face of Colgate everywhere. You know, it's just like I don't leave my house, and if I go more than 5 miles from my house, I see your face somewhere on something. So it has to be just thinking about, you know, where you started and the journey you were on.
Correct.
And growing into this space, like even if you weren't scared in the moment doing it, looking back on it now, you must feel like, oh my goodness, was I out of my mind?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's strange, right? Because I always used to say, I'm not that type of person to own my own clinic, right? I always wanted to be a business person, but I was just like, owning your own clinic, that's huge. And I'd see my friends do it. And I think it's that same fear, like that fear of failure, that fear that you're going to do something and what if it fails? Oh my God.
And the cost of the equipment. And I mean, and you do everything like completely cutting edge. You're like,
I try. And the thing is,
like, the first time I got this like 3D model of the inside of my mouth was at your clinic. And I was just like, I didn't even know that was a thing that could happen.
Yes.
So again, the cost of the equipment and just being willing to be at the front, because, you could easily say, well, you know what, let's let somebody else introduce that and then we'll see how it goes. But being willing to be out front, that has to be daunting as well. Sometimes I wonder, is it that you're young enough to be fearless because you don't know that
I'm definitely not. I try to be fearless, yes, but there is still a lot of fear there because, again, it's new, it's different, it may not work, the uptake may not happen the way that I wanted to, but I try anyway. And I am very blessed in that I work with some incredible women who are committed. And as with any team, there's always challenges, always. But I think keeping a positive mindset and also recalibrating. So, okay, if something doesn't work out, let's see what happened. Let's try it again. And that, I feel like that formula has always helped. For me, I always have a new idea, or I have like a list of ideas. So I'm just like, when should I introduce this? Because it can get, I think, a little bit overwhelming because I just want so much. I just want so much success with how we are doing things, and to just try and change the game a little bit, to try and change people's perception,
to raise the level of service, certainly
raise the level of service as well. Exactly. So, I mean, I
want to ask you something else. Now I'm going to lead this question, because should I lead this question or should I just ask you the question?
Go for it.
So, a lot of people say, talk about the fact that women don't work well together. And personally, and I talk over and over about the fact that is an absolute myth in my experience. I have led teams of women. I have been parts of teams of women. I've led multiple teams of only women. And there are no more struggles in a team of women than a team of men or a team mixed with men and women. But I think that there is this desire to have us fight over little pieces versus succeed all together, because I think we're perceived as dangerous once we collaborate, once we conspire together. Absolutely. And so you lead a team of only women, and what has that experience been like?
So it's been magic, actually. I say that because there's so many components that make us who we are. And again, it's evolution, right? So where we were last year is not where we are now. And I truly believe every single person has something magical to give. There's some people in my team that are hilarious. Like, sometimes I'm on a virtual consult with a patient and I'm laughing and I'm just like, that's hilarious. So as I said, like, everybody has their little bit of spice to put in. Yeah. And I really appreciate that about, everyone comes from all walks of life. Everybody has had to struggle in some way. Everybody's going through some kind of battle. And I think accepting, individuals, like, this is part of their journey. This is part of their story. They're going to be maybe 20 years down the line talking about what their experience is, working with our team. Yeah. And one of the things that one of the other things too is that my mom actually was a manager, an NHS manager. So I got a lot of these little tidbits from her. She does help me a lot, actually. Good. But yeah, one of the things to realize is that, it's to also provide an experience we spend so much time together. Yeah. So I try as much as I can to try and create that culture and that environment where it can nurture that those ideas, because yes, I know my business. Yes, I have lots of ideas, but they sometimes have even better ideas than I do. And
of course,
I need to make sure that we can do that, because I think that's our magic at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I think it's great.
But in terms of, it's weird. So it's not the first time I've had the question. Of course, there are going to be times when, because it's almost like a sisterhood, right? There are going to be times where we don't see eye to eye on something.
Of course.
We might have a bad day, or something might be going on at home that affecting, what we're doing that day. But
that happens on every team. Exactly.
And I think just recognizing that, and as long as people are willing to move on and to move forward, that's all I'm concerned about, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really good. And so, it's so important that we sort of focus on, being positive, being motivated, being willing to see things in others that they may not necessarily even see in themselves, and being willing to take them on that journey, pushing yourself beyond what you think you can get done, and seeing a bigger picture, and being willing to sort of fail forward and say, let's try again, let's wheel and turn again. And I loved when you were talking about, you're going to believe in your own ideas. I think I have to say that to my team all the time. Anybody who joins my team, I have to say, listen, I am going to feel very strongly about what I think is the right thing to do. I wouldn't be a leader if I didn't, but that does not mean that I have all the answers, or that my answer is the right one. But you cannot be afraid of confronting me if you disagree. You have to be willing, but you can't sort of disagree on a whim. Disagree and come with some information and say, well, listen, I appreciate this is what you want to do, but that's wrong. And I respect you more if you're willing to kind of challenge me. Absolutely. But I also understand I'm going to feel strongly about my position. Let's talk it through, but you can't be afraid of me.
And that's the most important thing, right? That communication, that discussion.
Yeah. No, we talk about ground rules, so like, this is our ground rules are, there is no staying in your lane. You have to, if you see something wrong in somebody else's area, you have to point it out. I mean, we have to look out for each other. Everybody comes with a different experience, and that experience is really valuable across the entire organization. Yeah. And that's why we need diversity, because somebody else's lived experience is going to help them to see something in a different way. Exactly. Yeah.
It's different lenses, literally.
Yes.
True. And even like, I've had some times where, I spent most of my adult life in the UK, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm still very much like, I still feel at times a lot more British than I do feel Trini. Okay. And so I feel a little bit like an outsider when I'm trying to understand certain things, because I know, I'm like, hey, help me understand, what does this mean? Or what is the situation? And there's some things that I listen to, maybe some podcasts or some ideas that I might get. And I'm like, will this work in Trinidad? Will this work with our culture? Because things are very culture specific. Like if you listen to certain strategies, or if you listen to certain ideas that we should introduce, it's very culture specific. And even in the UK, things that work in the US don't really work in the UK, vice versa, and in the Caribbean culture. So there's a lot of, as I said, like recalibration. There's a lot of learning that I've had to do myself. And sometimes it is I realize that, this wouldn't work because the message would be lost somehow, or it won't work because people are just not going to take me on. So it's a huge learning process. It's a great journey. I'm not afraid to laugh at myself. I'm not afraid. I don't think I take myself too seriously. And I think there is a pressure to succeed and to be excellent, right? But if it doesn't go to plan, it's not the end of the world. There's always a second chance,
Yeah. Oh, I love that. If it doesn't go to plan, there's always a second chance. Yeah. I absolutely think that. What a wonderful note to end on. Thank you so much, Dr. Hazell. I really, really appreciate it. I always enjoy talking to you and seeing you. I don't see you enough on the tennis courts these days.
We should play some tennis, right?
We should play some tennis. Yes. And so, especially since I'm not winning a lot these days.
Oh, no. This is when we should play.
Exactly.
Oh, gosh. You're really amazing at tennis. You're so good.
I really am not.
You are.
I really had a good
very
day.
humble as well. You're very humble.
I'm not. But really, really great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. And so I hope you learned something. I hope you understand that, fear may be keeping you back from what you're doing. And it's always good to just be open and humble and willing to engage people in all walks of life. Why diversity is so important in all of our organizations, and especially in our decision-making processes. And that, just be willing to start over if you make a mistake. I think that was one of my big takeaways from this conversation, just being willing to start over and to surpass your fears. Thank you so much for joining us on Getting to the Top. If you haven't already, please subscribe and like and comment and make recommendations. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.